Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the public briefing on with the Standing Committee of Economic Development and Environment. My name is Robert Hawkins. I'm the MLA for Yellowknife Centre and Chair of the Standing Committee on Economic Development and Environment. I will now ask members in the room to introduce themselves for the record, and then we will proceed with online. I'll start on my left with the MLA for Sawtooth and work our way through the members. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Welcome to the committee. My name is Danny McNeely, and I'm the MLA for the Sawtooth region.
Good afternoon. I'm Shauna Morgan, MLA for Yellowknife North.
Julian Morse, MLA for Frame Lake.
Thank you very much. I believe we have at least one member online. We'll give her a moment to introduce herself. Otherwise, I'll do it if there's connection issues.
Good afternoon. I'm the MLA for Great Slave, Kate Reed.
And thank you for that. So thank you. We are here today to receive a briefing from Infrastructure Minister Vince McKay on Bill 33 regarding the Technical Safety Statutes Amendment Act. And please note that this meeting is being live streamed through the Assembly's social media channel to all over the world. There are millions of subscribers, as I always point out. And I would like to remind all members, including our witnesses, that all comments and questions, of course, have to flow through the chair, and that's the administration portion of the show. And, of course, I'll recognize members as required to ensure we have a safe and smooth running meeting. That said, I will lean now towards call upon Minister McKay to provide opening remarks. And Minister McKay, if you could reaffirm or clarify who will lead the presentation in the room, if that's the case, and we will also talk about, we'll resolve the stick handling of questions and whatnot when we get to that point. So Minister McKay, if you want to begin and introduce your staff delegation. Thanks.
Yep, thank you. Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. Thank you for the opportunity to present Bill 33, the Technical Safety Statutes Amendments Act. I know you've all had a busy week there, and thank you for the opportunity this afternoon. Today I'm joined by Alison Scott, Director of Policy Planning and Communications. Also Kevin Dunbar, Manager of Technical Safety. And also joining us from Infrastructure is Jacques Roberge, Senior Legislation Advisor. The Technical Safety Statutes Amendments Act was introduced in the Legislative Assembly on October 29th, 2025. Bill 33 updates and replaces the current Elevators and Lifts Act with a new framework called the Technical Safety Act, or TSA. The legislative proposal outlined the need for common rules across all technical safety fields, modernized outdated legislation, and strengthened public safety requirements. It initially focused on boiler and pressure vessels, with plans for 3 additional proposals to later include other electromagnetic fields. Instead of developing several separate proposals, this draft bill broadens the original scope to cover elevators and lifts, boilers and pressure vessels, electrical systems, and gas safety under one act. The outcome remains the same as originally intended, a single modern law to govern all technical safety fields, but this approach is more efficient. I would like to now turn the table over here to Alison Scott for the short presentation about the bill, and after which we will answer some questions. And if I may, Mr. Chair, just because of the technical side of this and me being online, I will maybe just to get you guys to ask the questions to the individuals in the room with you there, just to save some time. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister, for that and being helpful. And if you wish to weigh in on a matter, maybe what I'll do is I'll get you to raise your hand and I'll recognize you first in advance of anyone else. And as pointed out, maybe what I'll do is I'll direct any questions first to Director Scott, and then we can proceed. But again, if you wish to jump in, I'll go to you first. Okay. That said, Director Scott, if you'd like to proceed with the presentation, the light will come on. The staff run both the presentation and the mics for you. Please.
Okay. Okay, great. Yeah, so we'll just take you through a few slides to give you an overview of the legislation. I hope, there it is. Perfect. So we'll just take a quick look at the introduction and purpose of the Act, some of the features and outcomes of the Act, and then some of our associated next steps. So again, as the minister outlined, the Act itself updates and replaces the current Elevators and Lifts Act with a new framework called the Technical Safety Act. It addresses the need for common rules across all technical safety fields, allowing for future modernization of outdated legislation while strengthening public safety requirements. It covers elevators and lifts, boilers and pressure vessels, electrical systems, and gas safety under one act. And collectively, we refer to these as fields of work. These areas will be phased in through regulations over the next 3 to 4 years. And then subsequently, codes and standards, which are developed at national tables, are adopted through the associated regulations. This is the current structure for the regulatory and legislative side of these fields of work. So basically, the GNWT currently administers 4 different pieces of legislation, which are specific to those fields of work or disciplines, and then there's a regulation attached to each one. So to create some efficiency here, we are going to this model. So the Technical Safety Act is an overarching or umbrella piece of legislation, which will oversee eventually probably about 4 to 5 regulatory pieces, which again would be specific to each of those fields of work. But this allows for some commonality between them and quite a lot more efficiency. So this will align us better with other jurisdictions in Canada. We're currently 7 of the other provinces and territories already work with this model of having an umbrella act covering the multiple fields of work and their regulated products, such as this, under the proposed bill. So some of the features, this will combine licensing, permitting, a registry, inspection, and appeal systems into one unified framework, again, eliminating gaps or duplication. It allows for a fair and transparent review of administrative and technical decisions. It will modernize and align the NWT's electromechanical legislation with other jurisdictions, and we expect that will facilitate some movement of skilled labor and trade. We see this as enhancing public safety by ensuring regulated electromechanical devices and systems are properly installed, maintained, and inspected. The Act includes, for instance, an appeal process to the Superintendent of Standards, which allows for a fair and transparent review of administrative and technical decisions. Previously, industry would settle debates before the minister and ultimately in court. The new appeal process is already in place for elevators and lifts under the Elevators and Lifts Act, as this was our most recently developed piece of legislation. And so for this particular field of work, that appeal process will continue as is, but be expanded to address the other fields. In terms of the proposed outcomes, again, improved enforcement and licensing, thanks to the harmonization of powers, permits, and appeals under one act, better coordination through streamlined movement of information between inspectors and various fields of work, greater clarity for industry in consolidating rules in one place, as lots of folks do work in different aspects and sometimes more than one. So we think this will allow for better coordination. As I said earlier, better alignment with other Canadian jurisdictions. And to be clear as well, existing processes and requirements will continue as usual during the transition period as we move to having all the regulations developed under this Act. So once the TSA comes into force, then our work on developing the regulations for each field of work will start. We intend to start with boilers and pressure vessels, as this was sort of next in our lineup of things that require some modernization. We do expect that work to bring all the pieces under the TSA will extend into the next assembly. And there will be obviously a fair bit of future engagement with a focus on each field of work as they're brought together under the new Act. Our intention is to complete the work on the boilers and pressure vessel regulation before the end of this assembly. And then, as I said, the gas electrical protection would be addressed in the future assemblies. And that concludes the presentation. So if there are any questions, we will do our best to respond. Thank you so much, Chair.
Thank you, Director. Committee, does anyone have any questions with respect to the presentation or just in general comments? I go to MLA McNeely.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your presentation on the, I would say, upgrading of the current rules. And you had mentioned the next step would be the regulations, developing the regulations. Is there a timeline for that portion to be completed after legislation is done? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I'll go to the Director and we'll see where it flows from there. Thank you. Director, when you're ready.
Thank you. I'm very sorry. I did miss just part of your question. You were asking specifically about timelines?
The regulations, when they'll be developed, but I'll go to Mr. MLA McNeely.
Yes, thank you. The timeline for developing the regulations. Thank you.
When you're ready, Director Scott.
Yeah, so thank you for the question. And the timeline for developing the regulations for the boilers and pressure vessels would be prior to the end of this assembly. So it would be within the next approximately 18 to 24 months, I would say. And then we would start to work on the other two sets. So the existing regulations on the Elevators and Lifts Act, they remain in place under the TSA. The boilers and pressure vessels needs to be modernized. And then the gas protection and electrical protection would be developed into the next assembly. In terms of the exact timeline on when that would happen, we expect that we would probably have everything completed in about 3 to 4 years. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. And as a reminder, we have approximately 668 days left in this assembly, but Mr. McNeely, anything further?
Not at this point, dear. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Not a problem. Not seeing anyone yet. I have a quick question maybe to stimulate a little discussion. Not included in this act, and fortunately enough, we have also with us today the Minister of MACA. Although we're technically here under infrastructure, but I can assure his reach and knowledge extends a little further. Is there a reason why the building inspections piece wasn't brought into this act as an opportunity? And I give a small touch of background. By way of background, it's not a secret, but it's a dirty secret, which is the fire marshal oversees this piece but refuses to enforce it. So if you build a building in downtown Delaney, Litzoke, Fort Simpson, there's no process revision for that, including staff or people who would do this work. Now in Yellowknife, it's a little different. That authority's been delegated, but that said, you can only delegate so much, and ultimately the department, and I'm referring to MACA just to be clear, is responsible for this, even though we know nothing's being done. Is this not an opportunity to say through this Technical Services Act, a gateway opportunity to fold in the dirty secret of non-inspections of building, and which obviously is creating a serious safety compromise in the north? Could we see that happening here in the next little future? If this act is passed in its current form, that opportunity eventually folding in, when I say eventually, I mean in the near while. Director Scott, unless the minister weighs, no, I'll go to Director Scott first. Unless the minister wishes, no, I see nodding. Okay. Director, please.
Thank you, Chair. So the element that the Department of Infrastructure is working on is looking specifically at building standards and developing a building standards framework. And we are working with MACA as well as the Department of Housing on that. And while we're still a few years away from being able to develop legislation specifically on a building standards framework, it has been considered in the development of the TSA. And there is the possibility that that would be something that could easily be rolled in as yet another set of regulations under that act. And once the building standards framework has been developed, again, the key question is about other legislative tools that should be integrated or whether it would be a standalone act. But we have considered that possibility under development of this one. In terms of, fitting in with the specifics of what's going on with the Fire Safety Act at this point in time, that was just something that simply wasn't within our scope at this stage. Does anyone else have anything to add?
No, I just want to be clear. I'll go to you, Mr. Roberge. I'm not asking you to answer for MECA, and I'm not asking you to answer for the Fire Marshal Office, who's not fulfilling their mandate and putting Northerners at risk. I'm saying, is there an opportunity under infrastructure to say, we know this is an embarrassing process, and people are at risk, and eventually we're going to find time to pull it into one scope, and that means people, money, et cetera. Like, I'm not a fool to think, oh, it'll just magically solve itself. I'm just making sure with the important question, which is, do you see the opportunity of infrastructure fulfilling a role that I think probably better fits anyway? So, and that's really where I was going with that question. Mr. Roberge, if you had something to add, I'd certainly welcome it. We got the mics, don't worry.
Yes, simply to add to what Director Scott said, in the design of the TSA, we took a modular approach, and we treat the fields of work as modules, which allows some flexibility in the future to address some of the concerns that you have by adding modules in due course and in collaboration with other departments in the future. And as Director Scott said, there's flexibility, and how it's going to go will be is to be advised, but at least the foundations are there. And in particular, the feature of the TSA, it has an enforcement system that will, and a registry system that are features that are essential in tracking issues or safety issues that will help enhance safety. And these are features and mechanisms that are transferable or applicable beyond just the 4 acts we're speaking here. I mean, the 4 fields of work we're speaking here. It could be transferable or usable in the future. It's an option. So that's all what I would say. Thank you.
And thank you for that. Before I proceed, I have Ms. Reed who would like to ask a question, and thank you very much. Please, when you're ready, Ms. Reed.
Thank you to the staff for the presentation. More of a comment, really. I did my due diligence and went and spoke to inspectors in Alberta to see what their electrical inspectors, to be clear, what their experience was with similar legislation in Alberta and British Columbia, and they had nothing but positive things to say about this kind of approach that you're taking with this legislation, that it's enhanced public safety, that it has made things better, reduced red tape. So very pleased to see this approach being taken up by the GNWT. Nothing further, thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. That was a comment, unless someone wants to jump in. Okay, I have MLA Morgan. Please, when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So my question is around the enforcement of the Act. Can you describe whether there's going to be a change in the inspection regime from what is currently? Like, are we adding new inspectors, or we just sort of changing in any way the job description of current inspectors or how they work together? Can you explain that to us? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that. Director Scott, when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. I'll address part of that, and then I'll ask my colleagues to fill in a couple blanks. So broadly speaking, the inspectors are responsible for carrying out and enforcing the Act and regulations as they are now. They have access to premises, to inspect installations and records, and they'll have the power to issue or suspend operating permits and impose compliance orders and safety orders. They'll also have the power to reconsider their decisions. In terms of what the Act allows for penalties, offenses can be applied on a continuing daily basis, 1,000 to 50,000 for individuals and 2,000 to 100,000 for corporations. So those are fairly significant, and they do represent augmentations over what we've had in the past. So those penalties are very similar to those in Alberta, Saskatchewan, and British Columbia, and bring the NWT in alignment with what industry currently, I would say, what they expect and experience in those jurisdictions. So we think those are all positives. We don't necessarily at this time see a change in the role of inspectors. However, what the Act will allow for, especially through having a common registry, is some changes that will facilitate better communication between the different disciplines when they go on site. And I'll ask Kevin or Jacques maybe to explain that a little bit further.
Okay, thank you, Director. Mr. Robert, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the MLA's question goes to whether there's a change in regime. As Director Scott said, the role of inspectors will remain the same, but the Act will provide, the proposed TSA will add a few tools that will make the work of the inspectors more efficient or more effective. A tweak is being brought in, is the introduction of licensing, meaning through the requirement for contractors to obtain a license, this will allow to track projects and the inspectors to track projects and contractors more effectively through the common registry. So that's a tool to identify issues more quickly. But as Director Scott said, the standards that are being applied are the same. The rules or what has to be met for electrical, for all these fields, are developed at national tables. We incorporate those rules and those standards. That's not changing. And the people interacting with the permitting or licensing system won't see much of a difference in the interactions they have. It's mostly the systems and the processes that we have that will improve the regime, but the rules will remain the same. So that would complete my answer.
Thank you for that. Okay. Okay. Emily Moran, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in terms of appeals, if someone wanted to appeal a decision of an inspector, what avenues would be open to them? My understanding from the bill is that it could go all the way up to a judicial review, but that judicial reviews are pretty narrow. And so how can people be confident that any appeal of a decision would be independent and fulsome? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Director Scott, please.
Thank you, Chair. Again, I'll provide an initial answer, and then I'll ask probably Mr. Roberge to fill in any blanks. So I would say essentially the bill allows for easier access to review. In its current states, most of the existing legislation, basically people have to take things to court, which we all know is a little less accessible. So what this allows for is an appeal process to the Superintendent of Standards. So that is an individual located within the Department of Infrastructure that will review administrative and technical decisions that are made by the inspectors, the chief inspector, and other officers that would have that responsibility. So previously, industry would settle debates with the minister and ultimately in court, which takes quite a bit of time. So this allows for a secondary sort of intervening stage. And through that, I think it actually allows for greater access to ask those questions and to seek an appeal. That process is already in place for elevators and lifts, and again, continues as is. Jacques, would you add anything there? Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Roberge, if you could help enlighten us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as Director Scott said, the vehicle to appeal an inspector or chief inspector decision is immediately to apply to the superintendent of standards. As Director Scott said, that person is independent from the inspector area, and that superintendent has the background knowledge and experience to review and make a substantive review of the decision and overturn it or modify it according to the criterias of the Act. And that process to the superintendent is final. The only step after that, as the MLA pointed out, is judicial review. Judicial review, in short, is not reviewing the substance of the decision. A permit was not issued because the project's not technically safe. A court in judicial review won't go into the electrical details or engineering details. Judicial review is only to ensure whether the process, the court will look at whether the process was fair, whether the superintendent of standards acted within their jurisdiction, that they exercised it, and they followed the rules of natural justice. So if there's a failure on one of those three things, then judicial review can quash the decision, and basically we go back to square one. A new permit can be applied for, and a new license can be applied for, and it starts. But the judicial review is very rare. It's expected to be very rare in the experience in other fields or areas where we have these administrative decision-making bodies. Judicial review is rare, and it's only for very narrow situations of procedural fairness and jurisdiction. So that essentially the appeal system is meant to be effective, quick, fairly quick, quicker than it would be to go through court, and focused on the technical aspects, technical and legal aspects, mainly done by the superintendent of standards. That's their role, and that's the appeal body. So that completes the answer. Thank you.
Okay. No problem. No problem.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just to quickly follow up, you mentioned that the superintendent is completely independent from the inspectors. Can you clarify, and I don't know the answer to this, do the inspectors report to the superintendent, or are they in a totally separate sort of wing or reporting chain? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Roberge, please.
Thank you for the clarifying question and the opportunity to clarify. So under no circumstance, and it's in the Act, the chief inspector reports to somebody totally different than the superintendent of standards. So that ensures independence. The superintendent of standards can be someone that has experience and knowledge that is appointed or named for that function, and it is not permitted to accumulate an inspector function and a superintendent function, because that would compromise independence. So there's safeguards in the Act to ensure inspectors are on one side and the superintendent is isolated from who they are reviewing the decisions from. Thank you.
Okay, that looks like that's good. That clarification. Not seeing anything further. I'll go around committee one more time, because we may be reaching the end, but not the finish. So folks, any further questions for the minister or the staff? Okay. Okay, so it looks like at this particular point, yes, okay. At this point, what I'm now going to give the minister a chance to provide any closing remarks, and then I'll close the session off. Minister, would you have any final words you'd like to say during this presentation and public hearing opportunity?
The only thing I'd like to say is thanks for the opportunity to present here again, and thanks to the staff there for the presentation, and committee for hosting us there, and hope you all have a great weekend after a busy week. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. And I'm not going to turn it into a form of a question, but I would like to see it maybe considered, or some type of response back, that there was indication of the building standards on the horizon, and I wouldn't mind seeing someday in the near future some type of response that formulates what that could look like and when that could look like. And I understand we're not here to talk about that today. I want to be very clear. I understand I don't want to conflate them, but I do know how important that is, and a person very experienced with sort of the old-fashioned trades industry or blue-collar, I understand how important these are key and passionate the members are. And by way of point, I did speak to a couple people in the industry, and this is, I chalk up as a gold standard answer. They don't care what's happening because they don't see this affecting them in any way whatsoever. So I'd spoken to some mechanical folks and electrical folks on the ground, and when I say I don't care, I mean, they do care, but they don't see any change for their jobs or impact on it whatsoever. This is more of an administrative technical side, just working closer together. And to me, that gave me both pause and comfort, in the sense of, if they don't see an issue with this, why should I try to find an issue with this? So anyway. That said, thank you very much for joining us here today. I thank both the public and our millions of subscribers who probably followed every moment of this presentation and public hearing. This now, of course, brings to conclusion our public discussion on Bill 33, a Technical Safety Statutes Amendment Act. And at this particular time, I'll now call the public discussion closed. And again, thank all our presenters, including the minister, for your time today. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful weekend. Cheers.